Legion. When the words were first said, the encounter only lasted for 3 or 4 seconds. My father, seated in his car with the door open, stared at me. The stare was one that I'd come to recognise from nursing homes. The face was there and the eyes were there, but the mind was not. Some of those blank old folks sat, and some stood, and slowly, aimlessly walked. Some of these residents that I had been around had said the same words over and over. I remember one old lady with a faraway stare, looking at unseen things or seen things with secret meanings that I could not know, repeating, "I love you, I love you, I love you." She had looked at me and through me and said those 3 most important words past me into the window and turned to tell the potted plant and the painting of a whale the same things. Besides with the unoccupied eyes, my father looked much the same, with the exception of a sag in his mouth that, if it weren't there, may have meant that I hadn't picked up that there was something off about him. He was brown and withered, with a week's worth of whiskers on his deeply lined face, and he looked at me, and past me, and through me, and said these most important words to me. "When it's time, will I sit down, or will I stand up?" And the second time it was said, there were 3 of us there, or perhaps 4, if the ghosts of my father were included. My fiancée, seated in the plush red jeweller's chair, stared at the jeweller. The jeweller, named Seth, stared at me, and I don't remember where I was looking, only that I didn't know where to look. "No, I can't do a ring. I can only sell you this." He stood and turned his back on us, and I heard the tinkle of metal as he moved his unseen hands on a secret table out of our sight. The red chairs were made of velvet, and I have always hated velvet. I can't explain how something so smooth can be so abrasive to my skin or to the nerves beneath my skin, in a way that quite literally makes my skin crawl with unease, and in a way that feels like a squeaking in the back of my clenched teeth. I looked at my fiancée, and I'd like to think that I smiled. She was, and she is, the most special person that God has put into my life. Her quirks are many, and every one of them is either deeply adorable to me, or is made adorable by sheer virtue of it being hers, and hers alone. I had told her for some time that I could not wait to put that band of gold on her finger, a symbol of something unbroken and unbreakable, to mirror my devotion to the only woman I would ever want to treat like a queen. The jeweller turned with a hidden thing in his hands and walked towards us. In that moment, it felt like a very, very long walk, and he had a peculiar smile on his face. The lips assumed their familiar, friendly shape, but the eyes did not, and there was a hidden thing in his eyes. And for a brief second a line ran through my head. "Don't listen to the heartbreakers. Take comfort in your staff and rod. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall see. This is all that I can sell you." Standing over us, unblinking, he lay his burden down on the table, and he removed the shroud. A silvery platinum crown lay on a golden plate. It was thin at the back, this crown, little more than the width of barbed wire, but swelled at the front to accommodate 3 or maybe 4 bulbous green gemstones. I had thought they might have been emeralds, but I now believe they were greenstone or jade or puanamu, or whatever you might find the most fitting word. They were circular and smooth, and as I struggled to understand, I looked at my fiancée and saw nothing. Her eyes were a hidden thing, and her beautiful lips were open a little bit, as though offering the possibility of speech if I could find the right words to unlock it. And so I looked back at Seth as the question formulated in my brain. His smile was wider now, and his eyes were colder, and he gripped the shroud in both hands as though it were a kind of weapon. And he beat me to the punch as he looked down at me. When it's time, will you sit or will you stand up? Then he dropped the shroud and he began to laugh. It was a soft, low laugh, and it was a deeply unkind laugh. My hands gripped the side of that God-forsaken chair, and I was about to stand, and I turned to look at the woman who would be my wife. She had begun to laugh too. She didn't look at me, she looked at the crown in front of her, and her laugh was a fundamentally kind laugh. Perhaps it was confusion and nerves. Perhaps she was laughing at the look on my face, for I typically have a very expressive face in which nothing is hidden or can be hidden, for it has no room to hide. I had been teaching her about acting, which has become a great mutual passion for both of us, and as she is still quite an enthusiastic and unstudied amateur, I can usually tell when her voice and character lack the sincerity of conviction. And so, as the curtains closed on this second occurrence of the words being said and the words being heard, I maintained that her laugh was a kind one, and she was not hiding from me in that room of blood and gold. And the third time it was said there were just two of us there, or arguably three if you count the person behind the curtains. We were at a theatre and we were about to watch a play. It was very much a community theatre. The seats in their 9 or 10 rows were plastic ones, albeit spruced up with a cushion, hidden beneath a black silky slip. The curtains, red velvet curtains, were old and unevenly coloured, and the room, while not tiny by any means, was small enough that projection would be no issue for the actors. I didn't know where the actors were, and I didn't know what the play was. I wasn't even aware of the man sitting next to me until he cleared his throat. Why he would sit next to me when there were so many other chairs, and chairs packed closely together too, so that I became then quite aware of his leg touching mine, didn't make much sense to me. But such is the nature of dreams, and in the dream, the rabbi looked across to me and he smiled. Do you know what time the show starts? He can't have been too orthodox. He had no payot, and it is likely that we were there on Shabbat, for I can't imagine a play making much money, and community theatres, as you know, need all of the money that they can get, if the play were running on a weekday, or even on a Sunday night. Indeed, he had the manners not to wear a hat that would obscure the view for theatre-goers seated behind us, and instead hid his head from God with a modest green kippah. In fairness, I can't know for certain that he actually was a rabbi. It was more a deduction, based on his age and the serenity of his presence that I felt, that is so often unique to people who are truly humble and secure in their faith. I smiled at him, and I turned back to face the stage, with my lips half hidden from his sight. I replied, I'm sorry, I don't even know what the play is. The rabbi laughed, and it was merry and sympathetic. He extended one bony arm towards the curtains and made a gesture that I didn't understand, and pointed at the crack in the curtains. Do you know, she is hidden behind there. I felt a bolt of panic, and I looked at him. I had the urge to stand, and I was right about to, before he said, calmly and lovingly, the same words. He never twitched a muscle as he sat and spoke. When it is time, will you sit or will you stand? I had awoken in fright. My partner has become accustomed to these bursts of nightmares, though I'm pleased to say they have become less and less frequent. She knew, before I needed to speak, that something unwelcome had been to see me in my dreams, and she said the words that she knew soothed me after flashbacks of long-buried and half-hidden pain. "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, I'm here, babe. I've got you. You're safe." She hugged into me, and she was so deeply, perfectly beautiful that I wanted to cry. I've made progress on this too, and those tears are less and less frequent. But the tears that I hid from her were happy tears, and they soaked into my soul as she held on to me tighter. And so I delineated my dreams, slowly and methodically and as carefully as I could. She listened, and I thought I saw a strange look on her face in the half-darkness between us. She told me these are just dreams, that the brain's inner workings are a thing that often don't make much sense and don't always mean anything. I dwelt on her words, and on the words, and she said that she didn't know. And she stood and she went to the toilet, and I chewed on what had happened. When she came back, she told me she'd done some sleuthing, and the pieces had begun to fit together. She told me that it's a line from The Sopranos, of which I'm a massive fan, although I'd forgotten this little line, such was the smallness of it in relation to the series as a whole. It was from a mere 3 or 4 second dream, where Paulie thinks about Big Pussy shooting on the fishing boat that they'd hired, and Paulie thinks of how his friend Tony had lately changed his tone. "Yeah, Don changed his tone. You get it, Don? Do you get it?" And how he'd just been told that the two of them, Paulie and Tony, were about to go fishing together. Big Pussy's last words were, "Do you mind if I sit?" Now, Paulie, according to the AI readout that my partner had studied, was wondering how he would respond to being trapped on that mercilessly indifferent ocean with someone he loved like a brother, who may or may not want to end him. I laughed, wondering how I'd forgotten this, for I have quite a good memory, though it's admittedly better with facts and figures than with memories of people, and wondering how she'd thought to search these words before I had. But the spell had been broken, and the fear was lessened very much. It was just my brain looping in and around something I'd seen on a TV program. It wasn't a mysterious pronouncement from the ether, and it wasn't a foretelling of doom from whatever forces control the future. It was explained, it was understood, and it was reasonable, and we went back to sleep. And the fourth and final time that I heard the words, "There were two of us, although there were legions of us also." I was driving on the Brand Highway on a beautiful sunny September day. My mother was beside me in the passenger seat, as she had been many thousands of times on many thousands of trips across many thousands of kilometres of country. Things were subtly different. The phone holder that's now in my car for navigating around Perth, which I'd only just started to do at the beginning of this year, was there, and my phone was in the holder, and it never would have been when my mother was alive. She had come to me many times in dreams since I'd found her body on that hideously sunny September morning. These visits had always been gentle and uplifting, and I, in my wallowing, I'd cried about them every time they had happened. I'd cried that the dreams had to end, and that it was so cruel that I could only see her in the brief candle of those dreams. I'd cried how I'd wake to realise again and again and again that I'd lost her, to relive the devastation of how terribly absent she was and still is. This was the beginning of my recovery, in a way. I was outlining my suffering in this regard to my psychologist, and he said whether I realised how immensely lucky I actually was to dream of her at all. He'd only once met his own mother in his dreams after she'd died, and I thought about it, and my sisters hadn't really dreamed of my mother either. In fact, even my father, who'd spent 45 or so years with her, had never seen her face in his dreams. My psychologist had told me that my problem was a symptom of a far greater blessing, and those words stuck with me, and they were the foundation of my recovery from crippling and sometimes nearly fatal depression. In retraining my brain towards gratitude and positivity, my true soul has become unhidden, that I have now become an unrecognisable person, and a person whom my mother would have dearly loved to have seen flourishing in the way that I now am. And so, with my mum at my side on another long journey through the lonesome valleys around Coomaloo, she shifted in her seat, and she sounded a bit irritated as I saw her freckly hand reach for the phone holder. "What's this for, Darcy? Are you lost?" I chuckled, or I'd like to think that I chuckled. I had been brisk and rude to her sometimes in life, and sometimes even cold, for reasons that now seem mundane and trivial, and maybe more to do with the old familiarity breeding contempt adage than anything else. And so, chuckling or otherwise, I'd responded, "No, Mum, no, don't worry, we're not lost." She definitely was in a snappy mood, and said back, "Well, what do you need it for then?" The phone holder, with its aggressively useless suction cup, was a bastard of a thing to actually mount in my car, and that reason alone would have sufficed for not taking it out. Let alone the very handy fact that it charges my phone while I'm driving, or the smug little kick that I get from looking at that phone holder and feeling like some kind of Star Trek tech wizard. But none of those reasons rolled off my tongue. I know my response was calm and happy, for any time the name of my true love is on my lips, I feel those feelings, and in the dream, her name was in my response. It's there in case Joanne tries to ring me. My mum laughed, and there was nothing hidden in her laugh. She had a veritable cackle, a dry, loud, sharply crackling kind of sound that all of her sisters have, and all of my sisters have too. And I'm delighted to say it isn't too far hidden in my own laugh. She looked across to me, and there was a half smile on her face, and there was a great light in her eyes, and I felt that she was immensely present. If there's one thing I am grateful for in her dying so young, it's that she will never go through the dementia that I'm so deeply afraid of happening to my father one day, and that I watch for with a self-destructive excess of vigilance. "Why would Joanne ring? Is she lost too?" I'd like to think that I laughed, but what I said now is a little bit unclear to me. It must have been something like this, though, to warrant the words that my mother said next. "No, Mum, she's not lost. Nobody's bloody lost anyway. No, Joanne just might ring, that's all. She might have some question for me." "You shouldn't ask a question if you are afraid of the answer," my mother said. It threw me off. There was a subtle menace in it, unwarranted and utterly unanticipated, that chills me a little bit even in speaking those words. My mother then grabbed my phone from the fancy holder and in one equally unwarranted and utterly unanticipated motion dropped it out the open window and onto the road. I was shocked. Whatever hidden intention caused this devastating act I still can't fathom. She was no help either, for she vanished from my sight and from my dream immediately, after having cut me off from all communication, after having isolated me in this capsule of death or destination that I, alone, had control over. Would I turn around to reclaim my phone, if it could ever be found hidden amongst the gravel and the bushes? Would I continue to a destination that I then realised I didn't actually know? And as I looked into the rear vision mirror, I caught the reflection of my eyes, and my face and my features were old and wrinkled, and I could see my lips hanging open slightly, hidden words about to spring to life. "I think it's time now, Darcy. Will you sit, or will you stand?" I stopped the car, and I turned the wheel one way, and then the other. As I began to move again, I rushed into a great white light, where an enormous everything was everywhere, and where I was alone, and where I was legion.